Why did they all stop talking the moment she walked in? It wasn't the kind of silence that came from respect, no. It was sharper than that. A silence that cut, that judged, that waited for a mistake. The bell above the glass door of Elite Arms gun shop gave a quick jingle, and the late afternoon light spilled across the polished floor. Dust motes drifted through the sunbeam, floating gently, as if time had slowed just to see who had dared to walk in. Her name was Vera Mitchell, 52 years old, silver streaks through her tied-back hair, a canvas bag slung across one shoulder. Her sneakers were worn. Her denim jacket looked older than most of the people in the room, and her right hand trembled not wildly, but enough that people noticed. The young clerk behind the counter smirked. He was 25, with slick-back hair, too much cologne, and the kind of confidence that comes from never being tested. "Grandma, the knitting store, across the street," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. A ripple of laughter moved through the room like static, the kind that comes easy when you think you're safe, when you think cruelty is harmless. Vera didn't respond. She just stood there, eyes calm, posture quiet. Her left hand gripped her bag strap while her right still trembled slightly, rhythmic, controlled, as if even the shake had a discipline to it. The laughter continued. She lost. Maybe her grandkids dropped her off. One man snickered from the ammunition display. "Can't even hold a coffee, let alone a rifle," another said. Someone else chimed in. "Maybe she's here for pepper spray." They all laughed again. But through the noise, one man in the corner stopped smiling. Jake, a former Marine, watched the way she shifted her stance, subtle, balanced, quiet. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. Feet shoulder-width apart, weight evenly distributed, center of gravity low. It was a stance you didn't learn in a weekend shooting class. The clerk, his name tag read Derek, leaned on the glass counter, his voice dripping with condescension. "Ma'am, seriously, you're in the wrong place. This is for serious shooters, not," he gestured vaguely at her trembling hand, "whatever this is." She took 3 steps forward, each one steady, deliberate. The tremor didn't stop, but the confidence in her movement made the laughter falter just for a heartbeat. "Barrett M82A1 CQB variant," she said softly. "The one with the modified buffer spring." Her voice cut through the air like a clean shot. The laughter stopped. The model she named wasn't supposed to exist outside of classified contracts, not in civilian stores, not on display. Derek blinked. "Oh, Grandma's been watching YouTube again," he said quickly, regaining his smirk. "Let me guess, saw that in Call of Duty." More laughter, but it was thinner now. A woman in a Gucci blazer and heels stepped forward, her perfume leaving a sharp trail. "Honey," she said sweetly, "this isn't a museum. These weapons are for people who actually know how to use them." She smiled like a knife. "Try the pawn shop down the street. They've got antiques." Vera adjusted her glasses, pulling them from a scratched metal case. The motion revealed a faded circular scar on her wrist. Old, clean, surgical. Jake saw it and something clicked in his mind. He'd seen scars like that before. Bullet wound, clean exit. Behind the counter, the store manager, Robert Chen, stepped out from the back office. He was in his 40s, a Marine veteran himself, buzz cut gone gray at the edges. He froze when he heard what she'd said. The specs Vera had just rattled off, the buffer spring modification, the reduced magazine load, the titanium firing pin, weren't online trivia. They were manufacturer secrets. And the way she said it, it wasn't guessing, it was remembering. Derek, still oblivious, called over his shoulder. "Hey, Robert, we got ourselves a Wikipedia warrior here. Grandma thinks she's got the inside scoop." Robert didn't answer, he just stared at her. "Security," Derek barked, still performing for the crowd. "We need to escort this lady out before she hurts herself." But no one moved. Jake took a step closer, his eyes narrowed. "That's not Parkinson," he said quietly. "What?" Derek scoffed. The tremor, it's not age, it's combat tremor, nerve damage from recoil. The air shifted, you could feel it. Vera's gray eyes met Jake's, just for a second. Recognition passed between them. Still trying to hold control of the room, Derek turned back toward the counter. Oh, great, another expert. You guys doing a convention here? He laughed nervously, but the sound didn't carry this time. People were watching differently now. The laughter was dying. Curiosity was taking its place. Vera moved toward the display case, her steps measured. Her eyes swept the room in a slow, practiced rhythm, counting exits, cataloging faces, scanning for potential threats. "Third row," she said finally, her trembling hand pointed. "Second from the left." Derek followed her gaze, still smirking. "You want that one? Sure. Let me just grab the $50,000 rifle for someone who can't sign her name without shaking." He looked to Robert again. "You seeing this? Comedy gold." Robert didn't move. He was staring at the exact rifle she'd pointed to. A Barrett CQB model they kept as a display piece. A variant that technically shouldn't even be in civilian hands. How had she known? 3 new customers walked in, 2 young men and a blonde woman with a perfect ponytail. They saw the crowd, the tension, the cameras recording, and immediately knew something was happening. "What's going on?" the woman asked. "Some old lady thinks she's a sniper," one of the men laughed. Phones came up again. Vera set her canvas bag down on the floor, unzipped it, and pulled out a slim, black wrist brace, sleek carbon fiber with micro-servo adjustments. She rolled up her sleeve to fasten it, revealing a network of thin surgical scars running along her forearm. Not random scars, repair work, precision operations. NASA tech, Jake realized. That brace wasn't civilian. It was advanced medical support designed for elite marksmen who'd suffered nerve trauma. "Arthritis acting up," Derek sneered. "Maybe grab some Bengay next time, Grandma." Vera didn't answer. She simply adjusted the brace, then extended her hand toward the rifle on the counter. Her tremor didn't stop when she touched it, but it changed. The rhythm shifted, became functional. The weapon, 30 pounds of precision-engineered steel, moved through her hands like it belonged there. She ran her fingers along the firing pin assembly, not even looking. "Firing pin spring tension, off by 0.3 millimeters, she murmured. "Would misfire in cold weather, maybe -15 Celsius. Robert swallowed. He grabbed a tool from the counter, checked the spring, and went pale. She was right, to the exact fraction. That level of insight wasn't possible from reading manuals. It came from experience, from lives depending on every click and calibration. "Ma'am," Robert began carefully, "where did you—" "I'm calling the cops," Derek interrupted, phone already out. "This is harassment. She's touching store property." The crowd shifted. Some murmured agreement, others stayed silent. A few had started streaming the confrontation live. Vera placed the rifle down gently. "Please," she said softly, "call them. Ask for Captain Morrison. Tell him Vera Mitchell says hello." That name, Captain Morrison, hit Jake like a thunderclap. He whispered it before he could stop himself. "Morrison, from the 212. Robert froze. Derek, completely missing it, barked into the phone. "Yeah, 911. We've got a disturbance at Elite Arms. Elderly woman, possibly unstable." He stopped mid-sentence. Robert had moved toward the internal phone, his voice low, urgent. "Sir, you need to see this. Right now. Yes, she's here." On the upper floor, inside the manager's office, the AI-driven security system had begun a cross-reference. Facial recognition pinged against encrypted databases. And somewhere in that digital silence, a classified file unlocked. Match found. Vera Mitchell, Quantico sniper instructor, level 7 clearance. Downstairs, a new voice broke the tension. "Holy Mary, Mother of God," whispered one of the older customers. "You're QSI 7. The room fell silent again. "Q what?" Derek muttered. Jake turned toward him, his voice low. "Quantico sniper instructor, Tier 7. They train the trainers, ghosts, people who don't officially exist." Derek laughed nervously. "Right, sure, and I'm SEAL Team 6. But Robert was already gone, running to the back office. When he returned, he held an old leather-bound logbook, the store's original records from the 1990s. He flipped to a page, found a photograph, and stopped. The image was faded but unmistakable, a group of military instructors, standing in front of a range, shaking hands with a general. And in the center was a younger woman with the same gray eyes. The caption read, "Chief Instructor V. Mitchell, Commendation for Training Excellence, 1998. Derek stared, his smirk gone. That could be anyone. Robert's voice was sharp. "Shut up, Derek." Phones came up again, recording, streaming, documenting. The mood had shifted completely now, from mockery to reverence, from laughter to disbelief. Vera stood quietly through it all. She'd been here before. The disbelief, the dawning recognition, the uncomfortable silence that followed. It never got easier. But she'd learned long ago, truth didn't need to defend itself. It just needed time. She looked at Robert. "One shot," she said quietly. "Give me one shot at 500 meters, then I'll leave." The words hung in the air like a challenge and a promise. The store went silent again, not with judgment this time, but with anticipation. Robert nodded slowly. "Clear the range," he said. Derek's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious. She could hurt someone." But Robert was already walking toward the back. "After she takes the shot," he said firmly, "you can say whatever you want." The crowd moved like a tide, following the sound of boots and whispers, phones still recording, hearts still pounding. Vera adjusted her wrist brace, took a slow breath, and followed. The tremor in her hand continued its rhythm, steady, familiar, almost intentional. And as the doors to the range swung open, the only question left hanging in the air was simple. What happens when truth pulls the trigger? Why was she so calm walking into the firing range, knowing 24 people were waiting for her to fail? The room smelled of oil and steel, the distinct scent of spent gunpowder embedded in the walls after years of use. Fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead. The polished concrete echoed with the shuffle of boots as the crowd pressed against the viewing glass, phones raised, faces tense. Vera didn't look at any of them. She just kept walking, one deliberate step at a time. Behind her, Derek muttered to himself, trying to regain control of the moment. "This is ridiculous. 500 meters. She's gonna miss the wall." But his words barely registered. The store's atmosphere had changed. What had started as mockery had become something else. Curiosity, unease, the faint crackle of respect trying to be born through disbelief. Vera knelt slowly by the firing bench. Her knees protested old injuries that never fully healed. She didn't hide it. She didn't rush. The tremor in her right hand continued, steady, constant. Every movement she made was deliberate, the kind of precision that came from a life spent in discipline. Behind the viewing glass, Robert was configuring the electronic range system. "Set distance, 500 meters, he said to the technician. The young man hesitated. Sir, that's the max range. Nobody ever hit the coin target from that distance." "Exactly," Robert replied quietly. "Nobody except maybe her." The coin, a silver dollar-sized challenge medallion, hung by a thin fishing line at the far end. It shimmered faintly under the range lights, swaying slightly from the airflow vents. It was a running joke in the store. No one had ever hit it. Vera didn't seem to care. She opened her canvas bag again and pulled out her old leather gloves. The stitching was worn, the fingertips softened by years of repetition. She slipped them on slowly, exhaling as if preparing for something sacred. The chatter outside dimmed. The phones lowered a little. For a moment, the only sound was her breathing. Robert leaned close to Jake. "You know who she really is, don't you?" Jake nodded slowly. "I knew the name, heard it whispered once. Phantom Mother, Quantico legend. Some said she trained the guys who trained the SEALs, thought it was a myth." "It's not," Robert said. "And if she's here," he trailed off, "the implications didn't need words." At the firing line, Vera adjusted the rifle. The same Barrett M82 A1 CQB she'd identified without looking. She didn't need to test the weight. She knew it instinctively, like an old friend she hadn't seen in years but still remembered every detail of. She checked the scope, dialed the elevation with micro adjustments, then lifted her gaze not at the target but at the air in between. "Wind's coming from the left," she murmured softly. Someone scoffed behind the glass. "We're indoors," said the woman in the Gucci blazer. Jake didn't look away from Vera. "She's not talking about outside wind. She's talking about air pressure currents from the ventilation system." The woman fell silent. Vera shifted her elbows slightly, lowering her stance. Her breathing slowed. Her entire body aligned with the weapon, a single, unbroken line of focus and control. The tremor didn't stop. It flowed through her, a rhythm she'd learned to live with. She no longer fought it, she used it. She inhaled, exhaled, and the world went quiet. In the viewing area, Derek couldn't stay still. "This is insane. She's gonna embarrass herself. She can't even hold it steady." Robert's voice was low but firm. "Then let her." Derek turned sharply. "You want her to." But Robert's expression silenced him. "You'll see." Vera's finger found the trigger. Her eyes softened behind the scope. And for a brief second the tremor disappeared. Not because it stopped, but because her body, her breath, her intent, all moved with it. The first shot cracked like thunder. The echo rolled down the range, slamming into the viewing glass. The crowd flinched. Then ping. A single clear ring. The coin had been hit, dead center. No one breathed. Derek's jaw hung open. That could be luck. Vera didn't look up. She adjusted her stance, the faintest motion of her shoulders. Her face was calm, detached. Second shot. Another thunderclap, another metallic chime. The coin split. A clean, perfect edge, one half falling away, spinning in the air before hitting the floor 500 meters away. A soft gasp rippled through the room. Vera's voice carried through the intercom, quiet but sharp. Third shot, to prove it wasn't luck. She closed her eyes. And fired. The remaining half of the coin disintegrated. Nothing left but a strand of fishing line swaying in the air. The silence that followed was almost holy. Phones lowered, mouths closed, no one laughed, no one spoke. Jake's throat worked, but his voice was raw when he finally found it. 15 years of competition shooting. Never seen anything like that. Not once. The Gucci woman pressed a hand to her mouth, her eyes glistening. Robert whispered almost reverently, she wasn't proving she could shoot. She was proving who she was. The range door slammed open. Heavy footsteps pounded down the hall. A tall man in a suit burst through, out of breath, his tie askew. Marcus Bradford, CEO of Elite Arms. He was not the kind of man who ever ran anywhere. Yet here he was, red-faced, gasping, eyes scanning the room until they found Vera. He stopped dead. And then his expression shifted, from confusion to recognition, from disbelief to awe. "Instructor Mitchell," he said. His voice broke the silence like a prayer. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Marcus, the man who owned the largest firearms chain in the Southwest, dropped to one knee. "Ma'am," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Cadet Bradford, class November '98, you saved my life in Kabul." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Derek's phone, still in his hand, was connected to 911. The dispatcher's voice buzzed faintly from the speaker. Sir, do you need assistance?" He didn't answer, he couldn't. His face had gone pale. Marcus looked up at Vera with glassy eyes. "Ma'am, after all these years." Vera blinked, the smallest trace of warmth softening her steady expression. "Marcus, I told you then I never liked the formality." He smiled weakly. "Respect doesn't always ask for permission." Then his tone hardened as he turned toward Derek. "This woman," he said, his voice echoing across the range, "is Vera Mitchell, the Phantom Mother. Chief Instructor, Quantico Sniper School for 25 years. He pointed at the destroyed coin. "She trained me. She trained my instructors. She trained the men who trained SEAL Team 6. The crowd fell completely silent again. Marcus took a breath. The tremor in her hands, that's nerve damage from Iraq. 2003. She pulled 6 wounded Marines out of a burning Humvee. 45 minutes under enemy fire. Separated shoulder. Damaged rifle. Didn't stop shooting until they were safe. Saved every one of them." No one moved. Even the air seemed to stop. The Gucci woman's perfect mascara ran down her cheeks. Jake's jaw tightened, his eyes burning with pride and shame all at once. Derek couldn't look up. Vera's gaze swept across the room, soft but steady. "It's all right," she said quietly. "They didn't know." Marcus shook his head. "No, ma'am, they judged, and that's not the same thing." He turned sharply toward Derek. "You're fired, effective immediately." "Sir, I—" "Don't." Marcus's tone cut through him like a knife. "You mocked a veteran who's done more for this country than you ever will. You saw an older woman and thought that meant weakness." Vera raised a trembling hand. "Marcus, let him be." He looked at her, torn between fury and respect. "The boy made a mistake," she said softly. "We all do. Some just get the chance to learn from it sooner." Marcus sighed, nodded slowly. "As you wish, ma'am." Derek's voice cracked. "I didn't know, I swear I didn't." Vera looked at him, her gray eyes steady. "You didn't look, that's the problem." Her voice wasn't angry, it was sad. The kind of sadness that comes from seeing this lesson play out too many times. The crowd gathered closer now, their faces different. The arrogance had melted away. What replaced it was shame and awe. The woman in the blazer stepped forward. Her earlier bravado was gone. "I said terrible things," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean." "Then don't apologize," Vera said simply. "Just do better next time. See people for who they are, not what you assume them to be." Jake exhaled quietly. "Ma'am, you just gave this whole room a masterclass in humility." Vera gave a faint smile. "Humility's just marksmanship with the soul. You aim, you adjust, and if you miss, you try again." By now, people outside the range had joined in. Videos were streaming live across social media, captions already appearing. "The Phantom Mother returns." Robert leaned toward Marcus. "It's spreading." "Let it," Marcus said. "Let people remember what real strength looks like." He turned back toward Vera. "You didn't have to prove anything, not to us, not ever." Vera adjusted her wrist brace, eyes distant, thoughtful. "Sometimes proving something isn't for others. Sometimes it's just to remind yourself that you still can." As the first reporters began to appear outside, as the phones kept recording, Vera stood in that range, trembling, composed, timeless. And the crowd that had mocked her now stood silent. You could almost feel their thoughts, hanging heavy in the air. The realization of how quickly pride can turn to shame, and how easily respect can be earned by quiet strength. No shouting, no anger, just proof. When Vera finally spoke, it was barely above a whisper. "Sometimes," she said, "dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." The words lingered long after the echo of her last shot had faded. And somewhere deep in the store's camera systems, the footage was already uploading, destined to go viral. Not as entertainment, but as a mirror held up to everyone who had ever underestimated someone based on what they thought they saw. Why did the world care so suddenly about one woman's trembling hands? By the time the sun began to set over the city, Elite Arms was no longer just a gun shop. It was a shrine to revelation. Phones everywhere glowed with replayed footage of the silver coin splitting in half. Comments flooded in, disbelief turning to reverence, mockery transforming into apology. The hashtag #PhantomMother was trending worldwide before nightfall. Inside the store, however, Vera Mitchell hadn't moved from the range. The smell of burnt powder still hung in the air. Her hands trembled as always, but the tremor looked different now, almost earned. Robert stood nearby, staring through the glass at her silhouette. "You realize what this means, right?" he whispered to Marcus. Marcus nodded. "It means every man who laughed at her will have to see what real strength looks like." Jake leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "No," he said quietly. "It means something bigger's coming. Ghosts like her don't walk into public without a reason." Vera finally exhaled and set the rifle down. The crowd had thinned. Some people had left in tears, others in stunned silence. A few lingered, still hopping to speak to her. Marcus approached slowly. "Ma'am, if you need anything." She waved him off gently. "Just air, maybe quiet." He nodded, gesturing for the others to clear out. The sound of shuffling shoes faded, leaving only the hum of the ventilation system. For a long time, Vera said nothing. She stared at the shredded fishing line downrange as if it still held a target. 25 years since I touched one of these outside a classroom," she murmured. "Still feels the same." Marcus folded his arms. "You trained half the military, it's not surprising." She smiled faintly. "Training others is different. When you pull the trigger yourself, the weight hits differently." Robert re-entered, holding the old store logbook. "People online are calling you the ghost instructor. Veterans are confirming it's you. SEALs, Rangers, even British units." Vera didn't react. "They shouldn't." "You saved lives, ma'am. They should know who you are." She shook her head. "Knowing invites attention. Attention invites politics, and politics ruins everything." Robert hesitated. "You think this'll cause trouble?" She turned toward him, gray eyes steady. "Everything causes trouble when truth meets pride." Meanwhile, outside the store, reporters were already gathering. Camera flashes painted the parking lot in bursts of white. Microphones waited by the doors. Through the glass, Vera could see their shapes, curious, hungry, impatient. Jake joined her by the counter. "You sure you want to face them? They'll want interviews, photos, probably your life story." "I've lived enough of it," Vera said softly. "They'll make up the rest." He smiled ruefully. "They always do." In a corner near the ammo shelves, Derek sat slumped on a stool, staring at his phone. The screen was filled with notifications, missed calls, news alerts, angry messages. The viral clips were everywhere. His own face, frozen mid-mockery, now a symbol of arrogance. The humiliation hit harder than he expected. The world had seen him at his worst, and no caption could undo that. He looked up when Vera walked past. "Ma'am," he started, voice cracking. "I'm—" She stopped him with a raised hand. "Save your apology for someone who needs it. I'm fine." "I wasn't thinking," he whispered. "No one ever is until the damage is done." She looked at him, not unkindly. "What matters is what you do next." Her tone wasn't scolding, it was weary, forgiving but firm. The reporters outside pressed closer, shouting questions as Marcus opened the front door. "Is it true she's a retired government sniper? Did she train special operations units? Why hasn't she spoken publicly before?" Marcus stood in the doorway, blocking their view. "No comment tonight," he said calmly. "This isn't a circus." Cameras flashed anyway. Behind him, Vera quietly gathered her things. The brace, the gloves, the worn canvas bag, every motion deliberate, patient. When she turned to leave, Marcus tried to stop her. "Ma'am, maybe wait until the crowd thins. We can sneak you out the back." Vera shook her head. "No, They need to see me walk out through the front. And she did. Each step through the aisle sounded heavier than the last, not from fear, but from memory, the echo of 1,000 marches before this one. The crowd outside parted as she emerged. No cheers, no applause, just silence. Cameras clicked. Someone whispered her name, someone else saluted. Vera didn't acknowledge any of it. She simply adjusted her glasses, nodded once to Marcus, and walked down the steps. For a moment, she looked like what she truly was. Not a legend, not a myth, but a tired soldier heading home from yet another battlefield. Hours later, Elite Arms had closed its doors, but no one inside could sleep. The videos were spreading too fast. Veterans forums, news outlets, social media feeds, everywhere. Robert sat at the counter scrolling through his phone. CNN wants a statement. Fox too. Half the gun community thinks it's a PR stunt. Marcus rubbed his temples. It's not a stunt. It's history walking back into the light. Jake leaned on the counter. History like that never stays buried for free. Someone somewhere is gonna want to know why she showed up today. Marcus glanced at him. You think this was planned? Jake shrugged. Nobody like her does anything by accident. The automatic door chimed again. The sound made everyone look up. A woman stepped in, tall, late 50s, wearing a military-cut coat that still carried the scent of cold air and discipline. Her hair was steel gray, pulled tight beneath her cap. The insignia on her shoulder caught the light. Full colonel. Store closed, Robert began, but Marcus stopped him. His instincts told him this wasn't a customer. The woman's voice was crisp. I'm not here to shop, I'm here for Vera Mitchell. Marcus blinked. She left an hour ago. She'll be back, the colonel said. She always circles back. The way she said it made the room go quiet. Jake straightened. Ma'am, who exactly are you? The woman looked at him. Colonel Patricia Hawkins, Joint Special Operations Command. I trained under her once. Marcus's brows rose. Then you know what that shot meant. Patricia's expression softened slightly. It meant she's still fighting something. She doesn't miss unless there's a reason. As if on cue, headlights appeared outside. The rumble of an old sedan echoed against the glass. Vera stepped out, jacket drawn tight against the wind. When she saw Patricia waiting, she froze for the first time that day. Hello, Patricia, she said quietly. Vera, the colonel replied, her tone caught between reprimand and relief. It's been 12 years. 12 years since I retired. You didn't retire, Patricia said. You vanished. No ceremony, no contact, nothing. Do you have any idea what that did to your students? Vera sighed. They survived, that's all I ever wanted. That's not the point. Patricia pulled a sealed envelope from her coat. This has been waiting for you since the day you left, your final commendation. Vera didn't take it. You came all this way to hand me paper. Patricia shook her head. I came because your name lit up 3 federal databases tonight. She tapped her phone. Facial recognition hit from this store's security feed. That triggered a review. And then Prague came up. The name landed like a gunshot. Jake frowned. Prague. Vera closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. That should have stayed buried. Patricia lowered her voice. Apparently not. Someone found documents, photos. They think one of your team might have survived. Robert looked between them, confused. Team? What team? Vera's gaze hardened. Operation Koslov, 1999. Joint mission gone wrong. 6 operatives went in. 1 came out. And that one, Patricia added, was her. The room went still. Marcus spoke first, his voice quiet. You're saying they want you back? Patricia nodded. They're assembling a new task group. They want her as advisor, 48 hours to respond. Vera's hands trembled harder now. Not fear, memory. I saw them die, Patricia, all of them. Thompson, Chen, Petrov, Morgan, Rodriguez, every one. The explosion leveled the compound. No one could have lived. Patricia's eyes softened. Then how do you explain these? She showed her phone, grainy surveillance stills. A man's face, aged but familiar. Sergeant David Thompson, taken 3 weeks ago. Eastern Europe, alive. Vera stared at the image. The tremor in her hand steadied as something colder took hold. If he's alive, then he's either a prisoner or a traitor, Patricia finished. The words hung between them like smoke. Jake swallowed hard. Ma'am, if this is real, are you going back out there? Vera didn't answer immediately. She looked at the photo again, at the man she'd last seen disappearing into fire and snow. Some debts don't expire, she said finally. If he's out there, I need to know which side he's on. Patricia nodded slowly. Then pack light, the plane leaves at dawn. Marcus stepped forward. Vera, you don't owe them anything. You've already given enough. Maybe, she said softly, but ghosts don't care about what you've given. They only care about what's unfinished. She picked up the envelope Patricia had set on the counter and tucked it into her bag without opening it. Tell your people I'll meet them at the briefing. Patricia inclined her head. 6 hours, Langley. Then she turned and left, her officers following in silent formation. The store was quiet again. The faint hum of the refrigerators filled the silence. Jake exhaled slowly. Prague ghosts, missing soldiers. What did we just witness? Marcus didn't answer. He just watched Vera tighten the strap on her brace. She looked tired, not physically but in her soul. The exhaustion of someone who had carried too many names for too many years. Finally she looked up. I came in here for a scope adjustment, she said softly. Fate had other plans. She walked toward the door, the tremor in her hands casting faint shadows under the flickering lights. Outside, the reporters had gone, leaving the parking lot empty except for the dark sedan waiting with its engine idling. Vera paused at the threshold. Marcus, that policy change you mentioned earlier, make sure it sticks. Not everyone has a story like mine, but everyone has a story. He nodded, throat tight. Yes, ma'am. She smiled once, tired, gentle, and stepped into the night. The door closed behind her with a soft chime, leaving the store in stillness once more. For a long time no one spoke. Then Robert whispered, Do you think she'll come back? Marcus stared through the window at the taillights disappearing into the darkness. If there's unfinished business, she'll finish it. That's what soldiers like her do. Jake nodded slowly. Yeah, they don't rest, they just find new battlefields. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, tracing thin lines down the glass. And somewhere out there, Vera Mitchell, the woman they'd mocked, the legend they'd rediscovered, was already heading toward ghosts that refused to stay buried. Why did the air in that conference room feel heavier than war? The walls were the color of quiet authority, gray, smooth, without a single clock or window to offer mercy. The hum of recycled air was the only sound. A single flag stood in the corner, motionless. Vera Mitchell sat at the far end of the long oak table, hands folded loosely, the tremor in her right hand faint but visible beneath the overhead lights. She wasn't nervous. She was remembering, and memory was its own battlefield. Across from her, Colonel Patricia Hawkins stood beside a projection screen, its glow washing their faces in pale blue. The digital timestamp on the footage read, Prague, December 24, 1999, 02:17 a.m. Play it, Vera said quietly. Patricia hesitated, then pressed a key. The grainy feed flickered to life, infrared footage from a drone, a dark compound in the snow, 6 heat signatures moving through alleyways, 6 names burned in Vera's mind before they appeared on screen. Thompson, Rodriguez, Chen, Morgan, Petrov, Mitchell. Her own voice, tinny through the speaker, Team Bravo moving to breach point. The camera caught the faint flare of a flashbang, then a burst of white static. When the feed returned, there was only chaos, heat signatures scattering, 2 blinking out completely, then another. The explosion bloomed like a sunrise that should never have happened. Patricia froze the frame. This was the last confirmed visual. You were extracted 15 minutes later by drone beacon. Vera's jaw tightened. Because the snow put out half the fires, they found me half frozen with shrapnel in my shoulder. Patricia nodded. We know, but this, she tapped the screen, is from 3 weeks ago. A new image appeared. Color. Street surveillance from an Eastern European border crossing. The face of a man, older now, scar across his cheek, eyes hidden beneath a cap, but unmistakably Thompson. Vera exhaled slowly. He'd be 51 now. 51 and alive, Patricia said. We have confirmation he's using the name David Carroll, working with an arms broker connected to several incidents across Eastern Europe. Vera's expression didn't change, but her voice lowered. If it's him, he's either deep cover or he crossed the line. Patricia folded her arms. We're assembling a retrieval team. CIA oversight, JSOC support. They want you to brief them. Vera let out a dry laugh. Brief them on what? How to survive ghosts. Patricia's gaze softened. No, on how to face one. A young analyst at the table cleared his throat. Ma'am, with respect, the files on the Prague operation are incomplete. Your report was redacted. Could you clarify what went wrong that night? Vera's eyes drifted toward the wall. Everything. She let the silence stretch until it became unbearable, then began slowly. We were sent to extract a defecting intel officer, code-name Koslov. Turned out he never existed. Someone higher up needed plausible deniability for an arms deal gone wrong. My team walked into an ambush meant to erase evidence. The analyst scribbled notes, and you were the only survivor. Not by choice, she said. The tremor in her hand had grown more pronounced. She steadied it against the table's edge. When the first blast hit, I was thrown clear. The others were inside the structure when it collapsed. I tried to reach them, but the secondary fire. Her voice faltered. For the first time in hours, she looked fragile, not from age but from memory. I remember their voices, she said quietly. Rodriguez was joking about the coffee. Chen was checking the same cable for the 10th time. Petrov was humming some country song about Texas. Morgan was writing a letter to his daughter. They were all so alive. And then, she snapped her fingers softly. Silence. The room said nothing. Patricia looked at her friend with something between admiration and pity. You carried that silence for 25 years. Vera nodded, and now it's talking back. After the meeting, she found herself alone in a narrow hallway lined with framed photographs. Faces of soldiers long gone, smiles captured before the storms came. Her footsteps echoed softly. Halfway down the corridor, she stopped before one frame. Operation Phantom Wind 1997. Her own face among a dozen others. Younger, unscarred. The eyes were the same though, steady, unflinching, already haunted. A voice behind her. You shouldn't blame yourself, you know. It was Marcus. Somehow, the CEO had found his way past security clearances and stern looks. He stood there awkwardly in his suit, holding a visitor's badge. You shouldn't be here, Vera said. I pulled strings, he replied simply. You saved my life once. I figured I owed you at least a goodbye before you disappear again. She smiled faintly, always the cadet. He shrugged, always the teacher, then softer, are you really going back out there? She studied him for a moment. You think I should? I think you've done enough. Her voice dropped to a whisper. That's what people say when they don't understand the weight of unfinished things. Marcus looked at her trembling hand. Then let me carry some of that weight. Vera shook her head. No, Marcus, you carry the living, I'll carry the dead. He looked down, ashamed, and she laid a hand on his shoulder, light, trembling, but steady in intent. Build your walls of honor, tell the stories. That's how we make sure people like them aren't forgotten. Then she walked past him, leaving him alone with the ghosts on the wall. Later, in the debriefing quarters assigned to her, Vera sat on the edge of a narrow cot, studying the envelope Patricia had given her. It was sealed with an official stamp she hadn't seen in over a decade. She hesitated, then tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of parchment, embossed with the Department of Defense seal. For exceptional service, valor under fire, and lifelong contribution to advanced marksmanship and operative training. Beneath the text, Medal of Distinguished Conduct, Vera L. Mitchell. No ceremony, no audience, just paper and ink. She folded it neatly and slid it back into the envelope. Recognition meant little when the faces that deserved it most lay buried under foreign snow. Her phone buzzed on the desk, a secure message from an unlisted number. Unknown sender, Prague remembers, do you? Her heart stilled. The same message she'd received before leaving the store. She deleted it without replying, but the words burned behind her eyes. She looked down at her shaking hands. They never stop, she murmured. Neither do you. 2 hours later, she found Patricia in the operations wing. Maps of Europe covered the wall, red circles marking possible sightings. You've read the message, Patricia said without turning. Same one as before, Vera confirmed. Whoever's sending them knows we're moving. Counterintel is tracing the signal, bounced through 6 proxies. They're not hiding, Vera said. They're inviting. Patricia faced her. You still want to go? Vera gave a small, tired smile. Want no need, yes. Patricia studied her for a moment, then nodded. Then you'll have my team. You won't go alone. Vera looked at the map, at the red circle hovering over Prague. Snow, betrayal, and fire. 25 years later, it still waited for her. Outside the building, dawn was breaking, pale light cutting through fog. The city below began to wake, unaware that an old war was stirring again. Vera walked toward the waiting transport van. The driver, a young soldier barely out of training, snapped to attention when he saw her. At ease, she said gently. He hesitated. Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, are you really the Phantom Mother? She smiled faintly. That's what they used to call me. My dad talked about you once, the soldier said quietly. Said his instructor used to tell stories about a woman who could outshoot God himself. Then your dad's instructor was exaggerating, Vera said. God doesn't need to compensate for wind drift. The young man grinned awkwardly, unsure if he was allowed to laugh. She climbed into the van and closed the door, the interior filling with the faint scent of old leather and dust. Through the window, she watched the base shrink behind her. Another mission, another ghost to chase. Her hand trembled on her lap, and she let it. Because the truth was, the tremor didn't come from weakness. It came from what she'd carried too long and refused to set down. The highway stretched ahead, endless and pale beneath the morning light. She leaned her head against the window, eyes half closed. The rhythmic vibration of the wheels beneath her sounded almost like a heartbeat, steady, patient, relentless. In that rhythm, she found the faintest sense of peace. But peace, she knew, never lasted long. Because somewhere out there, in a snow-covered corner of Europe, someone who should have died was waiting. And if he was alive, then maybe, after all these years, the real story of Prague had never ended. Why did the air in Prague still smell like cordite and memory after 25 years? The plane touched down under a gray winter dawn. Snow flurries swirled across the tarmac like drifting ghosts, each flake dissolving on the heat shimmer of jet exhaust. Vera Mitchell stepped out first, her boots meeting the frozen ground with a quiet finality. The city's skyline was distant through the haze, spires, bridges, and smoke rising from chimneys that hadn't changed since the last time she saw them. Only she had changed. The tremor in her hands had never stopped. The ghosts in her chest had never rested. Patricia followed close behind, clipboard in hand, every movement precise, efficient, almost brittle. A pair of younger operatives carried duffel bags behind them, new faces with bright eyes and no scars yet. Vera didn't ask their names. She didn't want to know who she might lose. The wind cut sharp across the tarmac as the team loaded into a waiting black van. The driver, a silent man in a wool coat, nodded once and pulled away from the airfield. No one spoke for a while. Only the rhythm of the tires on cracked asphalt filled the silence. Prague had changed. The old city was still beautiful, cobblestone streets, the Charles Bridge stretching across the Vltava River, but the beauty felt heavier now, worn by time and history. The buildings leaned inward like old soldiers who'd seen too much. The van rolled past Christmas lights strung across narrow alleys. The festive glow clashed with the mission's grim purpose. Vera watched the city slide by, eyes tracking movement automatically. A man in a long coat lingering too long at a corner, a car mirror flashing twice in rhythm, a woman pretending to check her phone but scanning reflections instead. Old habits didn't die. They whispered. Patricia broke the silence first. We've established a temporary command base near Old Town. Local assets are on standby. The Czech intelligence liaison wants a briefing tonight. Vera nodded. And the target? Last sighting was 3 days ago, Patricia replied, opening a file on her tablet. A grainy photograph appeared. A man in a dark market square, head slightly turned, a faint scar on his cheek. He's using the alias David Carroll, operates out of an import-export business near the river. Vera stared at the photo. Thompson never liked water. Patricia glanced up. You sure it's him? I trained him to shoot by instinct, Vera said softly. But you never forget the posture, the way someone carries their weight, that's him. The van stopped in front of a nondescript brick building with a faded sign reading Bohemian Glassworks, established 1923. Inside, the makeshift command room buzzed with quiet urgency. Screens glowed blue and green. Radios whispered in Czech. Maps of Prague were pinned to the walls, red strings crisscrossing between safe houses and potential sightings. Vera took it in with a slow, critical gaze. You've built quite the web. Patricia offered a thin smile. You taught me to. One of the young operatives, Hale, his name tag read, stepped forward. Ma'am, it's an honor to meet you. I read about you in the QSI training manuals. You shouldn't believe everything you read, Vera said gently. He nodded, embarrassed. Still, we're glad you're here. She looked around the room. Don't be. It means the ghosts are restless again. Hours later, the team set up surveillance. From the upper floor of a derelict building overlooking the docks, Vera watched through a high-powered lens. Snow drifted lazily over the river. Barges moved slowly under the bridge lights. There in the crowd below walked the man from the photo. Same gait, same scar. He paused to buy cigarettes from a vendor, head tilting slightly as if listening for echoes that weren't there. Vera's heart tightened. Thompson. Visual confirmation, she whispered into the radio. Patricia's voice crackled softly in her earpiece. Copy that. Maintain observation. We move at dawn. But Vera couldn't look away. The past and present blurred. She saw him not as he was now but as he'd been, laughing over bad coffee, humming Christmas tunes while cleaning his rifle, promising everyone they'd make it home. She whispered to herself, you made it home after all, just not the way we thought. Night fell heavy and cold. The mission room glowed with screens showing satellite feeds and thermal maps. The younger agents talked strategy, entry points, extraction routes, comms protocols, but Vera wasn't listening. She was watching the footage again and again, frame by frame. At one point, Thompson looked directly into the surveillance camera, right at it, too directly. Her stomach turned. He knows. Patricia leaned over her shoulder. What do you mean? He's not being followed. He's leading us. The room went quiet. Vera rewound the footage. See that? The cigarette drop, he's signaling. Someone's watching him too. Patricia straightened, meaning this isn't a recovery mission anymore. It's bait. An hour later, the power flickered. A surge of static burst across the screens. The radios hissed. Hale frowned. EMP pulse. No, Vera said. Someone just hijacked the local grid. A moment later, every monitor filled with static, and then cleared to reveal a single live feed. A man's face appeared, distorted slightly by digital noise. Thompson. Older, colder, alive. Hello, Vera, the voice said through the speakers. Calm, familiar. You always told me ghosts don't talk. I guess you were wrong. Patricia leaned in. Where are you, David? He ignored her. His eyes stayed on Vera. 25 years, you really thought I died? You wanted me to think that, she replied, voice steady. He smiled faintly. It was the only way out. You remember what Prague was, don't you? We weren't the heroes, we were the cleanup. Vera's jaw tightened. You switched sides. Did I, or did I stop pretending there were sides? The transmission flickered again. They'll trace this signal, Patricia warned. No, they won't, Vera murmured. He's using ghost routing, learned it from me. Thompson chuckled softly through the speakers. Still sharp, still shaking, still carrying everyone's sins but your own. Then the screen went dark. The silence afterward was deafening. Patricia exhaled. We need to relocate now. Vera didn't move. She was staring at the blank screen, seeing more than anyone else could. He's not just alive, she said quietly. He's testing me. Testing you. To see if I'll finish what he started. They moved that night, new safe house, new routes. Snow fell harder, muffling the city's sounds. Vera sat by the window of the safe house, her rifle disassembled on the table before her. The motion of cleaning it was mechanical, ritualistic. The smell of oil and steel filled the room. Patricia entered quietly. You should rest. I will, Vera said, not looking up. Patricia hesitated, then spoke softly. You think he blames you? I think he blames the world, Vera said, and he's about to make it pay. Then we stop him. Vera's hands paused mid-motion. If he's truly gone dark, Patricia, stopping him might mean killing him. The colonel's eyes softened. Would you? Vera looked down at her trembling hand, fingers brushing against the cold barrel of the rifle. I taught him how to breathe before pulling a trigger. If anyone going to end it, it should be me. Later, when the others slept, Vera stepped outside onto the balcony. Snow gathered on her jacket, melting against the warmth of her breath. The city lights reflected on the river below, gold and red and white, rippling like memories she couldn't hold still. Somewhere out there, Thompson was alive, watching, waiting. She whispered into the night, if this is a test, David, I'm still your instructor. The tremor in her hand moved with the rhythm of her heartbeat. And for the first time in years, she wasn't sure if it came from fear or anticipation. Why did the city feel like it was holding its breath? The snow had thickened overnight, turning the streets into white veins of silence. Prague slept under it, the kind of sleep that made every sound carry too far. Boots on cobblestone, a shutter creaking open, a heartbeat out of place. Vera moved through the narrow alleys like she had never left them. Hood low, gloves tight, rifle broken down into its smallest case. The faint hum in her earpiece told her Patricia's team was still on comms, monitoring from 3 blocks away. Base to Phantom, Patricia whispered. You've got visual on the docks. Negative, Vera replied. Still grid B14, moving toward bridge. She paused under an old stone archway, scanning the reflection in a puddle at her feet. A shadow moved on the roofline across the street. She looked up slowly, nothing there. The reflection rippled again. Her pulse quickened. Contact rooftop east, she murmured. The line crackled. We don't see. The rest of the sentence was cut short by a muffled pop. A bullet chipped stone an inch from her head. She dove behind a trash bin, snow exploding around her. The silence shattered. "Sniper," Patricia barked in her ear. "Move, grid C12, fallback route north." Vera sprinted. Her boots slid on the ice, but muscle memory carried her low, fast, precise. Rounds followed, clinking off wrought iron railings and ancient walls. She counted the rhythm, 3 seconds between shots. He wasn't spraying. He was measuring her steps. And she knew that rhythm. It was hers. She ducked into an abandoned cafe, the shattered glass crunching beneath her boots. The smell of old espresso and damp plaster filled the air. "Patricia," she whispered, pressing a hand to her earpiece. "He's not trying to kill me. He's hurting me." "Toward what?" "Toward wherever he wants to talk." "Negative," Patricia said sharply. "We exfil. He's setting a kill box." Vera crouched behind the counter, checking the magazine on her sidearm. "Then I'll walk into it before he resets the angles." "Vera." She cut the line. The cafe's back door opened into a narrow courtyard, walled on 3 sides. Snow had piled knee-deep. A string of old Christmas lights flickered weakly across a balcony. The world had gone quiet again. She crouched, scanning corners, windows, roofs. Nothing. Then a voice drifted through the static of falling snow, calm, almost gentle. "Still choosing the hard way, I see." Vera turned. Thompson stood across the courtyard, half hidden behind a crumbling stone column. No rifle, no visible weapon, just a radio in his hand. He looked older, beard graying, eyes tired but steady. The scar on his cheek caught the light from a distant street lamp. "David," she said, "you shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have called." He smiled faintly. "I wasn't calling you, I was warning you. By shooting at me. Had to make it look real. They're watching." "Who's they?" Before he could answer, another gunshot split the air, not from him. The round slammed into the wall beside her head, spraying dust. She dropped low, returning 2 shots toward the roofline opposite. "Your friends," she hissed. "Not mine," Thompson said. "They've been tailing me for months. You led them here." Vera's radio buzzed, Patricia's voice frantic. "We've got hostiles converging, unknown number, unmarked vehicles inbound. Get out now." "Too late," Vera whispered. Thompson tossed her the small radio. "They're triangulating this signal. You've got 60 seconds before this block lights up." She caught it, heart pounding. "You planned this." "I planned for me to die," he said, "not for you to show up." The rumble of engines filled the streets. Headlights cut through the snow, 4 black SUVs sliding into position around the courtyard. Vera grabbed Thompson's sleeve. "We move now." He shook his head. "They don't want me alive." "Then they'll settle for neither of us." She fired twice toward the nearest vehicle. The windshield cracked. Shouts erupted in Czech. Gunfire answered. They dove behind a stone fountain as bullets ripped through the courtyard. Thompson laughed under his breath, half mad. "Just like old times." "Except back then," Vera said, slamming a fresh mag into her pistol. "We had a way out." He pointed toward a rusted grate near the fountain base. "Still do, sewer access, 50 meters north." Vera covered him as he pried it open. "Go." He dropped through first. She followed, landing hard in freezing water that reeked of rust and old rain. Gunfire echoed above, fatting as they moved deeper underground. The tunnel stretched in both directions, brick, dripping, claustrophobic. Their flashlight beams danced across the slime-covered walls. "You knew they'd come," Vera said. Thompson nodded. "They always come when a story doesn't add up." "What story?" "The one we were ordered to erase." Vera stopped walking. "Start talking." He turned to face her, light catching his eyes. Prague wasn't a rescue mission. It was an execution. Koslov wasn't a defector, he was a witness. He had files that could have burned half of NATO. They sent us in to make sure he never got to speak. Vera shook her head. That's not possible, we were told. That we were saving lives, yeah, he gave a hollow laugh. We were saving reputations. The echo of his words filled the tunnel. She felt the old wound reopen inside her, the same pain that had followed her for 25 years. All those years I thought I'd failed them, she said quietly. But it wasn't a failure, it was murder. Thompson met her eyes. Now you understand why I stayed dead. A distant thud reverberated through the tunnel, then another. They're dropping sensors, Vera said. We need to move. They sprinted through the darkness, flashlights flickering off wet brick. Ahead, a faint orange glow, an exit vent near the river. Thompson climbed first, pushing the grate open. Cold air rushed in. As Vera followed, a shot rang out. The metal pipe above her head burst, showering sparks. "Sniper!" she shouted. They scrambled out into the open, the riverbank just below the Charles Bridge, snow swirling under the arc of streetlights. Across the water, figures moved, silhouettes with rifles and night vision goggles. Tracers cut through the fog. Vera rolled behind a stone barrier, firing short bursts to cover their retreat. Thompson grabbed a fallen rifle from the ground, an old Czech model, and returned fire with mechanical precision. "You still remember your fundamentals," she said. "You're still giving orders," he shot back. "Somebody has to." They pushed along the riverbank, ducking behind statues and pillars. The bridge above them glowed faintly with passing traffic, unaware of the firefight below. 2 o'clock, Thompson barked. Vera pivoted, firing into the darkness. A figure dropped into the snow. The sound of sirens echoed distantly. Police, maybe, or something worse. Thompson grabbed her arm. "There's a tunnel under the bridge, leads to the old catacombs." She hesitated. "You sure?" "I lived down there for 6 months, trust me." They dashed toward it, bullets chasing their heels. Inside, the tunnel was narrow and cold, carved centuries ago, their breath fogged in the stale air. Finally, silence. Vera leaned against a pillar, catching her breath. "You said they're watching you. Who are they?" Thompson crouched beside her. "The same people who buried Prague the first time. The mission files, the bodies, the truth. They built careers off that night." "You kept evidence." He nodded. "Encrypted drives, proof of what happened. I was going to release it. But then I saw your name on the casualty list and realized they'd use you as a scapegoat if I did. So you disappeared." "So I disappeared." He looked at her, voice softening. "I didn't think you'd still be fighting their wars." "I stopped fighting theirs," she said. "I fight for the ones who never got to choose." The sound of footsteps echoed behind them, flashlights bobbing through the dark. "They're here," Vera whispered. Thompson chambered around. "We split up." "No," she said. "We finished this together." He met her eyes, always the instructor. "Always the student," she said. They turned toward the approaching light. The first enemy emerged, a masked man with military posture. Vera shot once, clean, quick. The second came from the side, but Thompson was faster. The report of his rifle echoed like a thunderclap through stone. "Two more," Vera called. They moved in sync, wordless, fluid, old training reborn in motion. Every turn, every cover, every shot perfect. For a moment they weren't ghosts or traitors or legends. They were soldiers again. Then the gunfire stopped. Only the drip of water remained. Vera stood breathing hard, pistol half raised. The tunnel reeked of gunpowder. Thompson lowered his rifle slowly. "They won't stop, you know that." "I don't care." "You should." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small metal drive. "Everything on here. Names, orders, evidence, take it." "What about you?" "I'll buy you time." "David." Go Vera. For a heartbeat, she saw him as he once was, the younger man she'd trained, the one who'd hummed country songs before missions. She took the drive. You owe me a debrief, soldier. He smiled faintly. You owe me a bullet, ma'am. Then he turned toward the tunnel mouth, rifle ready, and vanished into the dark. Moments later, the sound of gunfire echoed behind her again, louder, angrier. Vera didn't look back. She ran toward the light at the tunnel's end, snowflakes spinning in through the broken grate ahead. When she emerged on the other side, the city was waking, bells tolling in the distance, the first hint of dawn touching the river. She looked down at the drive in her hand, cold metal, heavy truth. Somewhere behind her, the last echoes of Thompson's rifle faded into silence. She whispered into the quiet morning, sometimes survival isn't victory, it's just unfinished duty. And with that, Vera Mitchell vanished into the mist of Prague, carrying proof of a secret that could rewrite everything she'd ever believed about loyalty, orders, and war. Why was every footstep suddenly louder than her heartbeat? The cobblestones of Prague's old town glistened under a thin sheet of ice. The streets were nearly empty. Dawn hadn't yet convinced the city to wake. Vera moved fast, head down, coat collar high. The small metal drive burned against her ribs, tucked inside the lining of her jacket. Behind her, somewhere beyond the soft hum of trolley lines and river wind, a car engine idled too long. She didn't look back, she didn't have to. The hunter's rhythm was there, the same pattern she'd taught years ago. 3 beats, pause, 2 beats, surveillance tail, mid-range distance, civilian cover, professional. Patricia's voice echoed faintly in her memory. If they ever turn on you, blend with the ordinary. So she did. She slipped through the morning market as vendors began setting up crates of bread and fruit, the smell of yeast and coffee mingling with exhaust. Her movements were casual, hands in pockets, eyes down. Just another traveler. The reflection in a bakery window confirmed it, a man in a gray coat 50 meters back. Earbud in, scanning lightly left to right. Too confident, she muttered. She turned down a narrow lane, then another, weaving between stone walls and shuttered storefronts until she reached the Charles Bridge again. The same place the firefight had bled into dawn hours earlier. The snow from last night was gone, melted by sirens and floodlights. Only bullet scars in the stone remained. She stopped just long enough to whisper under her breath, "Goodbye, David." Then she moved on. The train station was already filling. Announcements echoed through vaulted ceilings, mixing with the hiss of brakes and the murmur of travelers. Vera bought a ticket with cash, Vienna, 2 hours south. She avoided the main concourse, slipping through maintenance corridors that smelled of diesel and cold iron. She found a seat on the rear carriage, facing the window. The seat beside her stayed empty until the last moment. A man in civilian clothes slid in, holding a newspaper upside down. Patricia's voice came from behind it, soft and steady. "You look terrible." Vera allowed herself the smallest smile. "You look predictable." "You cut comms for 12 hours. What happened?" "Thompson's dead," she said quietly. "He gave me this." She slid the drive across under the table. Patricia took it, eyes widening. "Is this everything? Orders, signatures, proof?" Patricia exhaled. "Do you know what this means?" "Yes," Vera said. "It means they'll never let us off this train alive." She wasn't wrong. 30 minutes into the journey, Patricia's phone buzzed, a restricted signal override. Her eyes flicked to Vera. "They found us." "How many?" "Enough." Vera's hand brushed the pistol holstered under her jacket. "We separate. 2 exits, 1 chance." Patricia frowned. "You can't just walk away with half the world chasing you." Vera met her gaze. "I trained you for moments like this. Follow protocol Echo 7. If I don't make it, you burn everything after you publish the truth." "Vera." The train jolted. A sudden deceleration. Passengers murmured in confusion. Vera's instincts screamed before the lights flickered. She rose, they're boarding. The sound of boots on steel echoed through the train cars, deliberate, synchronized. Not local police, not amateurs. Vera moved fast, weaving through the aisles as people stood to look. She brushed past them, murmuring apologies in Czech. Two men entered the far end, rifles hidden under coats. She ducked between compartments, slipping through to the luggage car. Steam hissed through a vent. The air smelled of metal and cold oil. She crouched low, peering under the door crack, boots moving closer. No time for hesitation. She pulled the emergency lever. The world lurched. Screams filled the corridor as the brakes locked, and sparks showered past the windows. Vera kicked the side door open before the train fully stopped. Snow and gravel blurred beneath her as she jumped. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs, but she rolled with it, shoulder back, knees up. Movement over pain, always movement. The train ground to a stop 200 meters ahead. Figures spilled out, black coats, tactical formation. Vera was already gone, slipping into the tree line beside the tracks. Branches whipped at her face, snow soaking her boots. The forest was dark and silent except for her breathing and the distant crackle of radios. She dropped behind a fallen log, pressing a hand to her earpiece. Patricia, respond. Static. Then a faint reply. I'm off the train, north side, you. East Forest, 4 hostiles tracking by thermal, don't break line of sight. Copy. Vera crawled forward, the cold biting through her gloves. The adrenaline steadied her tremor for now. She reached a ridge overlooking the tracks. The men below were sweeping in formation, flashlights slicing through fog. She counted 3, no 4. One lagging behind, scanning the tree line without commitment. Rookie. Perfect. She waited until he passed the fallen log. Then she moved. Quick, quiet, surgical. One arm around his neck, a twist, a muffled grunt. She lowered him silently, retrieved his rifle, and melted back into the snow. The others turned at the noise. Vera fired twice, controlled bursts, 2 targets down. The 4th bolted. She sighted him through the scope. Her breath slowed. Her pulse matched the rhythm of her shot. Crack. Silence. When she reached the tracks again, Patricia was there, breathing hard, hair wet with snow. You're insane, Patricia hissed. That's half a strike team. Half gone, Vera said. The rest will follow. Patricia held up the drive. They want this, not us. Vera shook her head. They'll want both. The evidence is useless if they can discredit the witness. We can't keep running forever. Vera's eyes met hers. Then we don't. Patricia frowned, meaning. We disappear, one last time. They moved through the forest until they reached an old maintenance road. A rusted sign pointed toward the border, Austria, 30 kilometers. An abandoned fuel depot sat at the crossroads, half buried in snow. Vera led the way inside. The walls were covered in faded Soviet markings, broken windows, a generator that hadn't run in years. Patricia set up the satellite uplink from her pack. Signal's weak, but if I bounce it through a weather satellite, it'll trace back in minutes, Vera said. I only need 60 seconds. She inserted the drive and began the upload. Code scrolled across the screen, encrypted files, names, coordinates. Vera stood by the window, watching the tree line. They'll be here soon. Patricia didn't look up, then stall them. Always the easy orders. Headlights appeared through the snow, first one, then 3. Engines idled low. The crunch of tires on ice drew closer. Vera loaded her rifle, checked her sidearm, and knelt behind a broken wall. She could see their silhouettes now, black coats fanning out, rifles raised. Professional, disciplined, patient. The lead man gave a signal. Vera exhaled. Then the night exploded. Gunfire shredded the air. Muzzle flashes flickered through the snowstorm. The old depot filled with smoke and dust. Vera returned fire in controlled bursts, moving between cover, counting rounds. A round clipped the wall near her head, showering concrete. She ducked, rolled, fired again. 2 hostiles fell, 3 more advanced. Patricia shouted over the chaos. "Upload at 68%. Make it faster." "I'm trying." A grenade clattered through the doorway. Vera dove, tackling Patricia as the blast tore through the room. The shockwave flung them both into the snow. Ears ringing, vision blurred, Vera crawled toward her rifle. The snow was pink now, someone's blood, maybe her own. "Patricia." "I'm fine," Patricia coughed, struggling up. 94%. Vera leaned against the doorframe, firing blind to keep them pinned. Then silence. The gunfire stopped, the snow fell heavier. A voice echoed from the trees, calm, cold. "Vera Mitchell." She froze. "I have orders to bring you in alive. Don't make me question them." The voice was deep, measured, American, not Czech. She stepped out slowly, rifle lowered but not surrendered. "Who are you?" she asked. "Contractor, tasked by people you used to work for." "Langley." He smiled faintly under the hood. "Let's not ruin the mystery." Patricia shouted behind her, "Upload complete." Vera's finger twitched. The man's eyes flicked toward the depot. "Then I guess I don't need both of you." He raised his weapon. Vera fired first. The report cracked like thunder. The man dropped, snow blooming red beneath him. Silence again, only the wind. Vera turned. Patricia stood in the doorway, pale but alive, laptop still glowing faintly blue. "It's done," she whispered. "It's out there now, every file." Vera nodded slowly. "Then it's finally over." Patricia closed the laptop. "What now?" Vera looked toward the horizon, faint light breaking through the storm. "We disappear, again, but this time by choice." She picked up her rifle, slung it across her shoulder, and walked into the snow. Patricia followed, leaving the depot burning behind them. By the time the fire reached the fuel lines, they were already gone, 2 shadows fading into the endless white. And somewhere in the noise of the waking world, encrypted files began to spread, proof of a truth buried too long. Vera's voice, soft and steady, echoed in her own head. "Sometimes survival isn't about living. It's about making sure the right ghosts finally rest." Why did the world seem louder once the truth came out? 3 days after the upload, every screen in the world flickered with the same story. Anonymous data leaks, redacted names unmasked, operations exposed. The Prague files. Governments denied, reporters swarmed, veterans whispered, families of lost soldiers wept in relief and rage. In one frame of shaky video, an old mission roster scrolled past, Mitchell, VL. The internet gave her a dozen new titles: the ghost whistleblower, the phantom mother, the instructor who never missed. But Vera Mitchell was nowhere to be found. Far from the headlines, the Austrian Alps were quiet. Snow fell in soft, slow spirals against pine and stone. A small cabin sat on the edge of a frozen lake, its chimney bleeding lazy curls of smoke into the cold air. Inside, a fire burned low. The light flickered across Vera's face as she sat by the window, sharpening a knife she'd never use. The tremor in her hand was faint tonight, steadied by routine, by silence, by distance. The radio on the table hissed faintly. International inquiry ongoing. Several resignations across intelligence agencies. Leaked files verified. Vera turned the knob until the voice vanished into static. She preferred it that way. A knock came at the door. 3 taps, soft, deliberate, familiar. She didn't move immediately, just breathed. Then she rose, her movements deliberate, graceful despite the years that had worn her down. When she opened the door, Patricia stood there, coat dusted with snow, eyes tired but alive. "I thought you'd be harder to find," she said. Vera smiled faintly. "You weren't supposed to look." Patricia stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Didn't have to. You left your fingerprints all over history." Vera shrugged. "I was never good at hiding my handwriting." Patricia's gaze swept the cabin, the rifle propped by the door, the half-empty mug of tea, the quiet simplicity of exile. "You've been watching the news?" she asked. "Enough to know the world's arguing about truth again," Vera said. "They're not arguing, they're terrified." Patricia sat down, rubbing her hands for warmth. "Half the agencies are eating themselves alive, the other half are pretending they knew nothing." "And you?" "I'm somewhere in the middle, technically suspended, probably for life." Vera's smile deepened a fraction. "Congratulations, you've joined the rest of us ghosts." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the fire crackle. Outside, the wind whispered against the shutters. Patricia finally spoke. "The files did what you wanted. Families are talking again. Names are being cleared. Thompson." Vera's eyes flicked to her. "What about him?" "They recovered the bodies from the tunnel. 2 unidentifiable, 1 positive match for David Thompson." Vera exhaled slowly. "He got his clean ending at least." Patricia nodded. "He earned it, so did you." Vera looked away. "I didn't do it for medals." "I know." Patricia hesitated, then added, "but people need to know who you were." "They already do," Vera said softly. "They just don't need my face to believe it." Patricia reached into her coat pocket and placed a small box on the table. Vera frowned. "What's this?" "From Marcus. He wanted you to have it." She opened it. Inside was a worn challenge coin, the same kind that had hung in the gun store's firing range weeks ago. Except this one was split cleanly down the center. "Half for you," Patricia said. "Half hanging on the wall at Elite Arms. They turned the range into a training foundation for veterans. Scholarships, therapy, everything. Your story funds it." Vera ran her thumb over the edge of the coin, tracing the split line. "You and Marcus did that." "Marcus said it was your lesson," Patricia replied. "Humility's just marksmanship with the soul. He put that on the sign above the door." Vera chuckled quietly. "He always did know how to turn wisdom into marketing." Then her expression softened. "Good. Maybe the next generation will learn to see people before they judge them." The fire popped, sending a shower of sparks into the air. Patricia leaned forward. "You could come back, quietly. No press, no fanfare, just come home." Vera stared into the flames. "Home isn't a place, Patricia. It's the people you didn't lose." "You didn't lose me." "I know," she smiled gently. "That's why you're still here." Patricia's voice lowered. "You can't stay in this cabin forever." Vera looked up at her, those gray eyes steady, ancient, unflinching. "I've been in worse places. At least this one has windows." Outside, snow began falling harder. Patricia rose reluctantly. "There's a convoy heading north in the morning. I can get you on it. New ID, quiet life." Vera stood too, stretching slowly. "I already have a quiet life." "This isn't living," Patricia said. "It's hiding." Vera tilted her head. "Maybe, but sometimes you hide not out of fear but mercy. The world doesn't need to see what war makes of people like us." Patricia's throat tightened. "You think the truth will make them better?" "No," Vera said softly, "but it might make them careful." They stood at the door again. The storm had softened to a whisper. Patricia turned to go, then hesitated. "Vera, do you ever regret it?" Vera's answer was slow, quiet, heavy. "Every name I remember, every order I followed, everyone I ignored." Then after a pause, "But I don't regret this." Patricia nodded. "Then maybe that's enough." She opened the door. Cold wind rushed in. Take care of yourself, Vera said. You too. Always, Vera lied. After Patricia's footsteps faded, the cabin felt impossibly still again. Vera returned to the window. The lake reflected a dull gray sky, no color, no movement, just stillness. She reached for the radio and turned it on again. Military inquiries expanding, whistleblower unknown, leaked documents verified authentic. Her fingers hovered over the dial, but this time she didn't turn it off, she just listened. The voice continued, and in related news, the newly established Mitchell Foundation has opened its first range for rehabilitating veterans suffering from PTSD. The initiative is dedicated to. The announcer paused as if uncertain. An unnamed instructor once known only by her call sign, Phantom Mother. Vera smiled faintly. I told him not to use that name. She leaned back in the chair, the creak of old wood filling the space around her. Her eyes drifted to the snow beyond the window. For the first time in years, the tremor in her hands didn't bother her. It was part of her now, proof she was still here, still moving, still unfinished. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Not Patricia this time. When she opened the door, Marcus stood there, older, weathered, still carrying that respectful unease he'd worn the day he'd called her ma'am in front of the whole store. Permission to step inside, he asked. Vera smiled. You never needed permission. He stepped in, shaking snow from his coat. You weren't easy to find. You shouldn't have looked. Yeah, he said quietly, but I owed you a thank you. For what? For teaching me what respect really means. He handed her a small photo, laminated, creased from years of carrying. It showed a young man in desert fatigues, arms slung around a grinning woman in training gear. The caption on the back read, Instructor Mitchell, Kabul, 1998. You kept this, she asked softly. Every day, he said. It reminded me to earn my title before I used it. She looked at him with quiet pride. Looks like you finally did. He nodded toward the fire. World's a mess again. Thought maybe you could help fix it. I already did, she said gently. It just doesn't look fixed yet. He smiled sadly. Will it ever? She looked into the flames. Not in our lifetime, but maybe in theirs. When Marcus finally left, the night had deepened. The fire burned low, and the only sound was the faint ticking of the clock she'd built from old rifle parts. Vera sat for a while longer, watching the snow outside the window, each flake dissolving against the glass. The past didn't hurt any less. The ghosts hadn't vanished, but they were quieter now. She picked up the split coin from the table, holding it between trembling fingers. Half for her, half for the world she'd finally made peace with. She whispered almost to herself, sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Then she slipped the coin into her pocket, stood, and blew out the lamp. Outside, the storm cleared, revealing a faint trace of dawn over the mountains. And as the first light touched the frozen lake, Vera Mitchell stepped into it, not as a soldier or a ghost or a legend, but simply as someone who had done what was right, even when no one was watching.